I just think that like the evolution of a brand takes time, and you learn things from kind of testing and failing. That's how I got to be an entrepreneur to begin with. So even with stores or new products or whatever, I kind of want to test and fail a little bit, because we're like some people who are, have large amounts of venture-backed kind of money will just jump right in and go as fast as possible because it's a race. So it's just grow, which I think for us, our brand is strong enough that we can not take our time, but just make sure that we do it right.
And so here we had this dilemma, this fact.
I've been almost a decade researching this subject.
Every aspect of your metabolic health improves.
From the Hint offices in San Francisco, I'm Kara Goldin, founder and CEO of Hint. You may have tried Hint water before, but this is my podcast. Each week, we talk to some of the most creative entrepreneurs, from world-touring pop stars like Jake Kassan to the people behind favorite Instagram accounts, including So Yummy, New York City, and even YouTubers like Sarah Dietschy. So the million-dollar question, what does it really take to be unstoppable? Let's find out. Hi, everyone. Welcome back, and thanks for tuning in. So today's guest is Jake Kassan, and I'm so excited to have him here with me today. He is the founder and CEO of Movement. That's MVMT, the world's fastest growing watch brand. On the show today, we dive into how he raised $30,000 in one day on Indiegogo, how he utilizes growth hacking, and his deep roots as an entrepreneur. He was making $10,000 a week when he was only 16 years old. We also touch on selling direct-to-consumer versus wholesale, how he hires and grows his team, and what's next for Movement. Also, thank you to those of you who have been leaving such meaningful reviews on iTunes. I'd like to share one of them from Lori Taylor. She says, Kara is one of my top entrepreneurial idols. I'm inspired by her story, passion, work ethic, and grit. This podcast resources men and women that are changing the world for the better. Thank you, Lori. If you haven't already, it would be awesome if you could support the show by leaving a review on iTunes, and maybe I'll read it in the next episode too. You're going to love this episode. Now sit back and enjoy the show. Super excited to have you, Jake. Guys, this is Jake Kassan. Super excited to have him. And for those of you who don't know about Jake and all of the great stuff that he's done, he is the founder of an incredible company called Movement, which is super awesome. Watches, but lots of other stuff in the horizon as well. And we're really excited to have him here today in West Hollywood. We're actually doing this whole podcast from the former home of Charlie Chaplin. Did you know that?
I heard.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome, right? It's hidden in here, but it's pretty cool. So excited to show some little videos of it as well. But Jake, so first of all, thank you so much for coming here. And I'd love to just kind of get your backstory. Like, how did you decide to start this great company? And tell me a little bit about you.
Yeah, no, totally. So I started this basically back in college, or when I was living in kind of the college town. I dropped out of college at 19 pretty early to start different businesses. In high school, that was the first time I kind of explored with different online businesses and found success. So early years into college, I dropped out because I had the opportunity to open up a store in a mall for a previous business. So I still lived and paid rent in Santa Barbara where I was going to college, but I would go home during the week to go and work the store and hire employees and do that whole bit. So that all kind of ended, and towards the tail end of kind of my college career, so to speak, I was trying to think about what I wanted to do next. And this was right around the time where Kickstarter and Indiegogo, the whole crowdfunding phase, was kind of going on. And I was just trying to reflect and figure out what I could do. And I saw a lot of people finding kind of rapid success in these different projects on Kickstarter. And I'd already had experience with an online store, online brand, so I knew that it was something that I was capable of doing. I wanted to figure out a product that I could really believe in. My previous businesses were very niche products, and if I went to a room of 10 people and tried to sell my product, probably one would buy. It just was.
What was the?
It was I describe it as I sold rave light accessories. So if Coachella, EDC, any of those things, I sold the accessories from tutus to pasties to lights, everything. So it just was very niche, and I just kind of like fell into that because the electronic dance music scene kind of blew up, and I was young, and so I went to a couple, and I was, who's selling this stuff to these kids. So just fast forward, I loved fashion specifically, and when I was kind of thinking about what product I wanted to get behind and start, watches came to mind just because there wasn't a brand out there that I really resonated with from really like what the brand represented. I'm passionate about brands like Nike, Adidas, Supreme, brands that stand for something more than just a physical product. And then for me also, it was just, at that time, all of the watches on the market that were well known just weren't really accessible for me in terms of a price point. So I think from a brand, the aesthetic of the design and the price point, those were all things that made sense to me. And I figured that if I could launch on a crowdfunding platform, I could raise capital to then fund the business and then build a business online, at least to start. So yeah, we launched on Indiegogo and raised $300,000. And last year we did $80 million. We're 5 years old and completely bootstrapped, haven't raised any capital. So
that's amazing. Those people listening who don't know much about Indiegogo, like how do you go about trying to raise money on that? What do you think what would be your advice in terms of people should do it, don't waste your time doing it. Yeah. If you have an idea like this, I mean, who do you think can be successful?
Yeah, I think physical products, physical goods, whether it's food or whether it's, a physical kind of fashion products, CPG, whatever. I think any of those are great to start on a Kickstarter, Indiegogo. I can't really think of many reasons why you wouldn't want to go there initially, for a few reasons. I just looked it up yesterday. I think Kickstarter gets 60 million people a month on their website, right? So it's just getting on the platform, you get free exposure, right? It's also a great way to test your story and to test your product and just, first off, get awareness and kind of cash flow to fund the rest of your business. But essentially you pre-order products. So for me, I pre-ordered 6 watches, took pictures of them, and those were just samples. So that cost me kind of a couple $1,000s to get the samples, but I didn't have to go place a full order, which an MOQ could be hundreds or thousands of units. So for me, it was the ability as a broke college kid with no money to go and max out my credit card and fund the samples, right? And I made a pretty video. I told my story. I explained what the whole concept of the brand was. And I gave the customers essentially 50 days to pre-order. And I told them that, if you guys back this project, down the road, we're not only going to have watches, we're going to have different products, we're going to have a handful of different watches. We're going to continue to build this movement and build this brand. And if they believed in the brand and they liked the product, then, we gave them a discount to be the first ever to have the product. And that's essentially how we funded it. So we had, really it took probably 6 months because we didn't have money to place an order until the campaign was done. So until 50 days are over, we had $300,000. That's when we put down the deposit for the first run of watches.
That's amazing. And so this is not equity.
No,
you're
equity.
Giving away. You're definitely. And is there an opportunity on Indiegogo to do it as equity, or is it?
I believe there is on Indiegogo. There's also other platforms. Yeah. I'm less familiar with that, and I think those are probably more. Maybe it's like app based, right, where you have no physical good to return. For me, if they give me $100, I'm going to give them a physical product in return. But if it's an app or something that they can't actually have. They have to have a piece of equity or some other type of compensation in order to for them to back it. But I don't know if that's as popular. I think less people understand the whole concept of equity and how it works. So people usually want to back a product that they can actually have, touch, feel, show off. So
now, did you know any of these people who were backing you, on Indiegogo? Did you, or were they just people from all over the world?
My mom and grandma and a few others, but outside of that, no, not really. It was So another thing is, I had a $5,000 limit on my credit card. I just got an interest-free 18-month credit card from Chase, and that was to fund the business, right? So we bought a camera from Costco and then returned it a week later, to film the video. We were very, very lean and bootstrapped, so we didn't have money to advertise either. So for us, it was going onto websites like Reddit or finding different blogs. I hired some people in the Philippines to go and kind of like upvote us on certain websites to garner exposure. So it was very much growth hacky. How do you get free website traffic and hopefully they convert? And then the great thing about Kickstarter and Indiegogo is that most people just launch and kind of set it and forget it. For us, because we kind of knew how to get traffic there, the more outside orders that you get, the algorithm of Kickstarter and Indiegogo actually say, okay, this campaign's more successful than the others. Let's give them more exposure because we think it's going to work. And then it just kind of turns into this snowball effect where they post an email or they post you on their homepage. And that's really how we started to really gain momentum. I think Indiegogo put us on either an email or on the homepage, and we made $30,000 in a day.
That's amazing.
And we went from like, maybe a few $100s a day to that, $30,000 a day. And then every day after that, it was like a few $1,000s until we got to the last day. So.
And so growth hacking, was that like your first sort of view into, you're self-taught, right? Like,
so kind of, I definitely self-taught because I had nothing else, but I did for my first, when I was 17, Kanye West came out with a song called Love Lockdown and did a live performance at the MTV Music Awards, and I sold a t-shirt that lit up to music. So it was sound activated, had this little panel on it, and it was like an equalizer. And I found it on eBay, I ordered 200, and I said, I gotta figure out how to sell this. So I recorded Kanye West's video, and it just so happened that his theme was, I think it was called Glow in the Dark Tour or something, so it was kind of more very lights.
Yeah.
And I had Kanye West for the first 5 seconds, and then it cut to me on my t-shirt. And this was back when YouTube didn't have these, now they get on top of that, but back then they didn't. So I think I had a handful of videos that reached 1 million views, and I just started selling thousands of dollars.
Did Kanye reach out to you?
No, he didn't. And in fact, people were pretty pissed. Like the comments on the videos were not pleasant, but they're funny to read. But they're pretty mean. But people were buying shirts, so and like thousands of dollars of shirts. I was like 16 or 17 years old, going to the bank every week, bringing $10,000 or depositing $10,000. So it was a really cool experience. So anyways, I saw that and I went, okay, you don't have to have this like structured advertising marketing like this. I'm doing things that marketing execs don't even know.
Totally.
So that just taught me that there's an advantage to me being kind of young and using certain platforms such as Instagram or social media across the board to leverage ways to make money. So I've kind of, that's always stuck with me. At this scale, it's harder to do for me. Like it doesn't make sense for me to go and try and growth hack a certain area to make $100,000. Like we're doing TV now, we're doing radio, we're doing podcasts. So for us, I'm looking for scalable things, but I think that there's still an opportunity for the young entrepreneur and new platforms out there like Snapchat or Twitch or whatever it is, where I'm not familiar with it, but there's certainly ways to do it. So
well, I think it's true, and I think it's. I always say, like, it's not just about the older you get, but the more experienced you get, it's like you don't actually see the opportunities that are right in front of you, right? Like, I think yours is a great example, and that's why I always say, like, it's not just about the younger audience, it's the people that are not necessarily saying, like, they're marketers, they're like, they're whatever, seasoned marketers, or they've been working in the industry. To me, that is irrelevant in today's day and age, because when I hear stories like yours, it's really about, it's great that you were 16 or 17 years old, but it's really about, like, the stuff was right in front of you, and you knew how to be scrappy, and you knew how to roll up your sleeves and actually figure the stuff out. So I think that's such a cool story. So briefly want to touch on, you're in college, trying to figure out, like, what you're going to do, and you just, like, you call your parents, and you're like, I'm not going to do this anymore. Were they just freaking out?
My dad is an entrepreneur. He had a business for 23 years, and then it went under with the economy, so I kind of saw, a comfortable way of life, and then kind of struggling over the years, and I think he pushed me for sure to be an entrepreneur. He always had me doing things that were a little bit more labor focused, so I was painting curbs, like American flags on curbs, and doing all this other selling. He owned a soccer center, so I would like make soccer mom bracelets and stuff, and sell keychains and sell them. So, but I hated making them, and I hated painting the curves. I liked the money part and the marketing part, but
Yeah.
So I think, anyways, point being is like my dad knew that I didn't want to go to school. This was a conversation over the years. So when I told him, and I told him the reason for it was that I was going to go open up a store at a mall, and I had an opportunity to open a store there. And meanwhile, my website was making six figures, so $100 and something thousand a year.
That's insane.
So my dad was like, okay, this is real, right? This is going to happen. And when I went to the store, I signed a 3-month lease. It was kind of a pop-up before pop-ups were even a term, I guess. But and I had I think in December we had a $50,000 month. So everything was looking good. And then I made a decision, let's sign a year lease. And it was in a really, really bad place in the mall, like a horrible place. It was known for no tenant has ever stayed there for over a year. But I was like kind of defined that because I think I had this online brand and I was bringing customers. I already had a line out the door for Black Friday, and I for whatever reason, like, it was working for me. And then so I told him that, he was all for it, and then I ended up having a competitor put me out of business who was actually on Shark Tank as well. So he's definitely, and we're friends now. He always tells me that I owe him for kicking me out of the industry because found watches. But yeah, I think my parents were they were okay with it. I think the issue came, or like the frustration came, when the business went under, and I actually owed my parents some money, I owed my grandparents some money, and they started to feel real frustration as I didn't really have this company anymore. I was a dropout of college, and I started working ballet up in Santa Barbara just to support myself so I can kind of finish the year up there. But I felt like the tone changed in my parents' voice. They were not disappointed, but just, I don't know, antsy, right? Like, they're anxious and like kind of like just hoping that I figured it out, but things weren't looking good in my favor, right? Like, I was a dropout of college at 19. The only career, kind of knowledge I had was my previous business in an industry that like was a very niche industry. So I was definitely like freaking out for a little bit, trying to figure out what I wanted to do.
And then you decided movement. So how did this, so let's talk about, the next chapter of your life when things started to, I don't know, not necessarily look up, but you started to get a bug in your bonnet, whatever. What's the saying? To go and actually do something new. So obviously you looked at less niche businesses and watches, and were you always a watch guy? Did you always have a lot of watches? Or
I didn't have a lot. There were certain brands that I loved, but I couldn't afford them. So I loved watches, and it was an accessory. It was like the one accessory I owned, but I didn't have a big variety of them just because I knew which brands I would have. But even those brands, as I got older, I felt less connected to. It was, action sports brands. They were like skate, surfboard was their focus, or some of them were just really bland, and I couldn't tell you what the brand was or represented. So as I got older, and Instagram and all these social media platforms kind of came to be, I realized that none of these guys had taken advantage of connecting with the customer, right? Like, there wasn't a connection past, I'm going to go to a third-party retail store and buy the product, and I'll talk to the sales rep about the brand. Like, there's no direct brand to customer communication. So I just realized that early on, and also just the aesthetic of a lot of watches. Like, not that, I think we have our own aesthetic. I think it'll evolve over the years. I think brands evolve. Right now we're a very minimalist brand, but I don't consider us to always come out with only minimalist products. So I don't know. It was just a combination of kind of everything, and realizing. And I had thought of other projects. I was actually going to do a boxed water back in the day, and then just didn't.
Terrible idea.
With it. Yeah, I didn't know. I didn't know what I was doing. But our buddy, his dad owns, his uncle owns Reed's Beverages. So, and he was my roommate. So we were like, all right, beverage.
That's so funny.
We know someone in the beverage industry. Like, how do we figure that out? And I wanted to start like an agency to help people get websites developed, because I had done a handful. So, and probably 10 other things I can't remember right now. But so I was always thinking about what I wanted to do, and watches just made sense because I wanted something that had the ability to scale to like a large, just had a huge industry. Again, something that I could walk around and talk to 10 people and potentially sell to half of them at least, right? So watches just check the boxes off, and movement, although we started with watches, like, I consider us an accessories brand. I know we have to kind of point and kind of roll the ball in the direction that we want to go. So we're still a little premature in that sense, but we have sunglasses that have done very well. We have jewelry as well. So the goal was always like, if we can build this lifestyle brand, and watches kind of being that hero product, we can grow into being this, larger than life lifestyle brand. So.
Okay, so watches online. So you just made this decision not to do your pop-up store, not the mall, not selling them in the mall.
Well, I learned the hard way.
Yeah, you learned the hard way, focusing online. But the other thing that's really interesting, so your primary business is men buying these watches, right?
It's about 70-30.
Yeah, which is super interesting in e-commerce because men aren't really supposed to be shopping online.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what most people, and yet you've proven that wrong.
Yeah.
So that is extremely bold. I mean, on so many levels, I applaud you for that because I think most people who are e-commerce experts would also say, like, you can't actually build a business that is, not only scalable but sustainable based on men actually buying, but you've proven that wrong, and you've proven that people are buying multiple watches as well. So this is not just a one-time thing. That's super, super cool. So what is the average price point right now that people are?
Right now it's around $130. It started around, so right now they range between $95 and I think the most expensive is $165. Again, our whole thing is like, price is going to be, price is something that is important to us. We want to make sure that we offer, accessible price points and still high quality products. I think the main focus with price is like if we come out with a watch that has different types of kind of internal components that are more expensive, like our watch will still be competitively priced in comparison to like traditional brands. And a large piece of that is the fact that we did start with a direct-to-consumer model. We're not a direct-to-consumer brand only. We do sell in Nordstrom and Bloomingdale's, and we're rolling out other wholesale partners. But it's just because we started online, like we didn't have to deal with that middleman, and we were able to really just sell direct and have a better margin that way. So
that's awesome. And do you feel like, so did that just start with the Nordstroms, or has that been going on for?
We've been doing Nordstroms for 2.5 years now.
Oh, that's awesome.
Nordstrom's, Amazon, Bloomingdale's, and then we're rolling out we're doing a pretty decent sized kind of wholesale distribution strategy over the next 12 months.
I was just having a conversation with a friend of mine who doesn't do direct to consumer but runs a pretty big offline brand, and we were talking about how so our business, we have like 40% of our overall business at Hint is direct to consumer, which for a beverage company is significant. And we love that business. That's not including Amazon. And so we do Amazon as well, and then we sell in, the grocery stores across the country and college campuses and lots of other programs as well. But I always tell people that we love our direct to consumer business because we actually have a relationship with the customer. So although we really like the, business of selling in Publix and Target and all the rest of these businesses, we just feel like it's almost branding for me versus actually like having that relationship with the customer. Yeah. So, like I love the sales and I'm sure you do as well, but I really think like just the cachet of having your product in a Nordstrom is awesome, but you're not going to get that email address so that you can go out tomorrow and say, hey, you bought this watch and you'll probably like this watch as well. So that's the downside of it.
I used to have a different view. I used to have a view of wholesale's bad and stay away and then I've just realized that, as a brand, you need to be sold where your customer shops, right? And I think it's important that that you can offer that. So I think for us, actually, I've learned and I've realized that there's an advantage to having, I think, starting online first or owning a larger percentage or just understanding that business at least helps you because you're able to get the email address, you're able to tracking of any type of advertising or anything becomes much easier. So just the data component alone, and you make more typically, right? So that's a big important piece. But I think that as you're spending marketing dollars, if someone sees, as an example, we have TV now, right? So if someone sees us on TV and they can only buy on our website, the chances of making our return on kind of investment there is probably a little more difficult to do rather than, we're also in Nordstrom's and we're in Blooming and we're in 100 other stores. Like the chances that they will convert at some point, there's a higher likelihood. So that's kind of been, and then on top of that, it's awareness as well. How many people didn't know about you and see you in a store and then buy you? So I think there's a lot to be said about that. I think it's just timing and how you kind of, what's your rollout plan. I think for us, direct to consumer, for many people, direct to consumer is the only way that they can afford to grow a business. I mean, most of the brands that are either bootstrapped or very little capital are only able to start direct to consumer because if they were selling to companies like Costco and they wanted huge orders, I mean, you have to be able to find or have access to capital to fund those. So for me, it's, every day that we sell a watch, we basically get that money and reinvest it into more inventory, right? So versus having terms or whatever it is. So now we're at a point that as we go into distribution and wholesale, we have a line of credit and we're just a bigger brand that we can afford to deal with this. But if you start in wholesale, it's very capital intensive. Also, the risk of you going to a store, whether it's a Whole Foods or a Nordstrom, and not performing because your brand's not well known, that's kind of your only shot. So for us, every store we've launched in, we've had wild success because people know about us and we have this following online. It was funny, even another growth hack with Urban Outfitters. We launched Urban Outfitters and they did online only. And we started emailing our customers. We purposely put the SKUs that we sold them out of stock on our website. And anyone that signed up would get an email saying, Urban Outfitters has this. Sold out of everything in 2 weeks, and then Urban Outfitters rolled us out to like 50 stores or something like that. So it's just like little growth hacks like that we used. What we realized is we weren't making as much money, and Urban Outfitters isn't the greatest watch retailer anyways. So, and then by the time we signed up with Nordstrom, it was just our brand was organically well known online, and people were going in asking for it. So, but anyways, that's kind of my mindset of strategy wise. Now, there are some brands that make sense to be like their model of being direct to consumer is what gives them that advantage fully, and they'll stay like that. But I think for a lot of brands, like it's how you start and then evolve over time.
Well, I think to your point too, that if you start out, as we did as a wholesaler to stores, and it's a little bit different, a beverage, that is less than $2 versus what your product is. But, most of these retailers, they don't want to actually take a chance on you, right? Because you're not really a brand yet, and they believe that their brand is more valuable than your brand. Yeah. And so it's, if you get a chance to actually get into these stores, then best case, you maybe get, 2 SKUs. Yeah. Best case, right? And like you beg for 4 SKUs, but you get lost in the sea of, like lots of choices of watches or lots of choices of beverages or whatever, and then you only have so much time before that retailer will bump you out of there. Yeah. And so what we learned early on is that we typically just say no. Yeah. And there's always this, I get asked by entrepreneurs all the time, it's like, when do you say no, right? Because it's like, the game now too. Like if you go in with, into an Urban Outfitters with two SKUs, you're going to fail, right? They're going to stick it somewhere in the store, and it's not going to really have your brand, and people won't be able to see it, and then people won't buy it. Or they'll think, like, gosh, I can go to Nordstrom's and buy this product, and they have 25 of them there versus a choice of 2, and so then Urban's going to fail. And they could have been successful, right, if they actually gave you more selection, but they're not they're not like thinking about it in a strategic way that's actually, how am I going to be successful as a brand and partnering with this product. So anyway, I think what you've said is really, really like right on, because if you have the ability to go online first, that's the way to show these offline retailers that they need to have a bigger selection. They need to actually like have a credible partnership scenario set up for this consumer, so that the consumer's not going to go elsewhere for the product too. So
and it's funny, I have a handful of friends now that are in kind of I don't even know, like consumable type of products, and sell to Whole Foods or Costco or whatever it is. And because I've just been fascinated with the fact that once, like, I have a watch that can last for years versus a product that is consumable, and if they like it, they want more, right? Yeah. So in that instance, it's I've seen them the struggle of going into Whole Foods and having to do samples, or like they're inching their way and they're doing well, but it's just a lot of work and a lot of kind of and just like the wholesale, you're talking to different buyers and meeting them, and it's a lot of work. And I look at the way we build our business, and not every consumable product can be sold online, right? Like it's whether it's weight or it's just something that people want to go to a grocery store to buy. But I think that watching kind of what we've done with growing it online, building a brand online, like I think that if we launch into any retailer, and we've seen this with distributors around the world, we're actually 40% international as well. So we have distributors around the world requesting for our business right now because the brand's well known and hot in different parts of the world. So I've seen this like ability, and we've spent a lot of money and we've done a lot of work online. That online work has direct offline benefits, and
Totally.
And I think it's just, it could be harder, and maybe it's just because I don't know that industry as well.
Yeah.
But doing it offline, I think you're segmented to like what stores you're in, right? Like if I'm spending my time and energy in Los Angeles for the stores I want to work in, it just seems like a lot of like mind share and effort for just one small region versus a TV ad that can go essentially global if I wanted it to, or Facebook or Instagram or whatever it is. So I don't know, I think there's a balance, but I guess what I'm saying is I definitely think a direct-to-consumer strategy, at least to start with a Kickstarter, whatever it is, doing that is going to give you leverage. Even if you fail and you're like, okay, we're going to go to wholesale strategy, it's going to give you leverage in the long run for the wholesale, the Amazon, whatever else.
Well, I think what you're talking about too is really data. It really boils down to the data, because if you talk to your friends who are launching in Costco or Whole Foods about, who their customer is, I mean, they'll at best talk about who Costco's customer is, right? They don't actually know. And if somebody's going to go in and buy their product, they're not going to have that data. And so what you have done is you've taken that data and then you've continued to have a dialogue with that customer. And I always tell people too, I do believe that direct to consumer, especially early on to figure out whether or not you have a business or not, if you don't have a product that people are going to want more of, like on a somewhat regular basis, and I mean, very different product, a beverage versus a watch, but most people who enjoy watches, I think either you have one or two watches or you have a lot of watches. Like I have friends who, primarily male friends, that have lots of watches, and that's like the only accessory that they have. Like they don't have purses, they don't have, right? Like they have like one leather, briefcase or whatever, backpack, whatever it is, and then they have lots of watches. And so I think that the sniff test on your category is brilliant, because it says like, yeah, there's a lot of people out there that are going to do it. I think that the whole male thing versus female, it's like completely like, I love it because it's like you saw it as like, yeah, I think it can work, and now how do we go and get those people too? I mean, it's, and obviously, if I would have been investing in this company, I would have looked at it as like, look, Dollar Shave, it's the same thing. It's like people were like, who would go and invest in razors? No guys are online buying, but they are. Yeah. Like they're definitely on there. So anyway, I think that's super, super cool. So when you talk about the data, and we talk about it a lot internally, what do you think is the key thing if somebody's going and launching their site online? I mean, what are the things that they should do first to make sure that their data is getting set up the right way?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're starting off completely kind of day one, I think Shopify is a great tool. Just that kind of takes a lot of the other components that you would have to worry about completely out. There's so many apps that integrate with Shopify, so simply having Shopify, you have a kind of an optimized checkout. The templates on Shopify have pretty much been battle tested, that that they're usable and workable. There's brands. We started with a template on Magento and then hated that and went to Shopify, and we're spending less. It was like $150 template on Shopify, and we're able to build a $1 million business off of that. And then the following year, we're still on Shopify today, but the following year did $7 million with basically $1,000 or $2,000 of kind of web development of tweaks. So it wasn't like we did a ton. Now that's not inclusive of browsing the apps and clicking install and going from there. But I mean, you're getting email addresses. We had what's it called, abandoned cart email that was like a $10 a month plugin, and whenever people typed in their email address and had something in their cart but left for whatever reason, maybe they weren't ready or whatever, they got an email, and those were converting customers, and we paid $10 a month and converted 25 customers a month in the early days, and
That's great.
and we were like, we're okay with that, right? So I think there's just little things like that. I think when you get to a larger stage like us, there's you have to get a kind of a data warehouse and start to worry about stuff like that. But early stages, it was the emails and names and addresses and phone numbers, that's all stored in Shopify. You can have everything other than their basically credit card information, which is good because you don't want to be liable for any of that anyway. So having all that, I mean, you can export the data where needed. So we'll take that data and kind of aggregate it with Google Analytics and other areas, and then push it into a data warehouse now. But early days, it was pretty much Google Analytics and Shopify, and all the data really necessary is there to make data-driven decisions as to, hey, did this Facebook work, or did this Instagram post work, or whatever it is. You can kind of understand more about your website and make data-driven decisions.
So you were mostly doing a lot of the stuff early on, and then people always ask me, like, how do you find people too, like who can actually help you to get better at the stuff? And it's it sounds like I always tell people I know enough to get me in trouble, right? But there's always, I hire people that are better, that actually know how to do these things along the way. But I think, I'm a big believer that a founder always needs to stay involved and know a little bit about all of these different things along the way. But how did you find these people, along the way? Like, how many people do you guys have now, too?
We have just under 40. Internal, we have another 30 that do customer service that aren't technically under the company. But initially it was, so I started talking, I networked more, actually less with founders and more with marketing kind of VPs or directors, because it was like I wanted to know how to build the business. And every time I talked to a founder, it was about hiring, or it was about fundraising, and it was all things that I needed to know, but what actually moved the needle was, how do I operate? Yeah, right, like how do I go from spending $1 million a year to spending $10 million a year and profitably, right? So I talked to a lot of people from Dollar Shave Club and MeUndies, and
would you just call them?
I use LinkedIn, kind of like the LinkedIn tool. Yeah, I would reach out with a clever kind of subject line and offer to buy them a drink, and if they didn't respond, I'd hit them up somewhere else. And
so mostly in LA.
Mainly in LA. Actually, almost exclusively really in LA. There's a few people I've met over the years now and from San Francisco, and as the business has grown, like, it's been easier. If I reach out to someone, I typically get a response now. But usually it was pretty persistent, and I think just people wanting, I think the difference is founders get hit up by people all the time, but I think VPs and directors getting hit up for kind of, hey, will you be my mentor? Will you help me with this? Can I buy you a beer? Like that, I think that's a cool feeling. So, and it's good for them to network to different businesses anyway. So for me, it was meeting them and then understanding like what I needed to know or what I didn't know. And I kind of developed an understanding as to how the business needs to grow and what we were doing right or wrong today, and like what's my next hire? What's my next marketing hire? Is it a CMO? Is it a director? And I met with other CMOs even, and I had other CMOs go, it sounds like you need a CMO. And I just started kind of backtracking and trying to figure out exactly what it was. And then I reached out to, through kind of a network, found a popular recruiter in Los Angeles, and he really helped us understand exactly. I mean, if you hire a good recruiter, they're going to help you understand exactly what the role is and like what you may be missing, and so just kind of helped develop exactly what it was that we wanted. And I knew that it was also to a point where I had to turn down opportunities, podcasts or speaking events, or really just a handful of things, other areas to grow the business, because I was so consumed by the day-to-day marketing. And I just realized like I need to kind of delegate and find someone who can do it better than I can, because I felt that there was things that I was overlooking that I didn't know, right? Like I was making money, we were doing well. I scaled the business to about 30 million before we hired a CMO. But I knew that like to get to the next step, there's just more people involved, and we hiring more employees, there was kind of more issues and whatnot. So found him through a recruiter and relocated him from San Diego. But our CMO came in, and then he hired a handful of people underneath him, all people that I kind of helped source as well. I'm pretty for the marketing side at least, I'm very involved in kind of who we're hiring and where they came from and just kind of networking. But so yeah, I think knowing Facebook, because I ran Facebook for a long time, and I ran a handful of kind of the social channels and organic, and so understanding, along with Shopify, understanding all those components, they're really like some of the most important pieces of the business that's going to grow and scale the business. I felt like I was able to hire people better because of that. Where it's tough to do. Like, I think a founder has to do what they enjoy, otherwise they get burnt out. And but for me, I enjoyed the marketing side, so it was kind of weird giving it up. But I also knew and had faith in the people that I was giving it up to, and it's proven to be the best decision that I've ever made.
That's awesome. That's super, super cool. So other categories. So you briefly touched on this. So sunglasses and other stuff that you're working on. So how did you decide to go into these other categories? I mean, did you feel like people were? So we launched a sunscreen, and that was my own story of sort of wanting a better sunscreen. And I don't know if you've tried sunscreen, but it's an amazing product. But it definitely was something that I was looking for. But customers were saying to us, like, what kind of chips do you eat? Like, what kind of other products do you use? And so I really like talking about the relationship with the customer. I mean, I'm sure you get this a lot too, where customers are writing to you and sort of, not just giving you ideas, but also saying, can you guys solve this problem? It seems like you really get who I am as an individual.
Totally.
Is that sort of where that came from? I mean,
yeah, I think there's a combination. I mean, there's been some, there's a handful of products. We get a lot of customers asking for different products. I think it's, for us, we wanted to expand into a different category. And for us, I don't know, sunglasses we just identified with, and kind of there's a monopoly of like Luxottica and all these other large kind of brands that own Sunglass Hut and Ray-Ban and, I don't know, 25 other brands. So for us, it made sense, kind of what, essentially why Warby Parker came to be. But for us, it was just the fashion side of it. And when I think about what the main fashion kind of sunglass brand is, it's Ray-Ban, at least for my demo. And I think for, a large portion of at least the United States. So for me, it was coming out with an accessible kind of price point and, comparable quality and then just like designs and a brand that people could actually connect with. I don't think Ray-Ban does a good job of having that connection with the customer. So they do a good job at, distribution and selling, but for us, we saw an opportunity there. And so we did that. And we've learned a lot. I think it's been 2 years since we first launched sunglasses. So, and we don't have a ton of capital because we're bootstrapped. So it's kind of launch what we think is right and kind of do a soft launch, learn from it, and then kind of iterate from there. So we've learned a lot. I think this year we really did it right, and next year we'll do it even better. So it's a learning process. We've also launched jewelry last year in Q4. Same idea, soft launch, and we'll roll into a more aggressive launch this year, and then next year I think we'll do an even better job. But those are like the main categories that we're focused on. I think each of those categories are multi-billion-dollar categories, and I just want to make sure that, and I think they all fit together pretty well for the most part. So we just want to make sure we do them well before we go kind of all over the place.
Go crazy with that. So you mentioned a few other eyeglass companies that are out there. So they've, gone full force into stores. Have you thought about going into, I mentioned this too because we're launching our first store actually next week in San Francisco on Union Street. Yeah, really, really exciting. Actually, it's a water bar. And so, so we, which is, a lot of people are sort of like, oh, wait, what are they doing? I mean, they're launching a water bar, but I started to really think about, like, why is it that whenever you want to go and just grab a quick conversation with somebody, then you go grab a coffee or a tea. Like, why can't you just go grab a bottle of water and just go hang out and have a place where you can go charge your phone, have a place where you can, listen to good tunes, just like a really happy place where you can just like sit there and just chill for a little while and, be like a buck, to have you don't have to, there's no big ticket,
Yeah.
you don't have to order food. It's just, you just want to get out and go do something. So, yeah. So anyway, we're really, really excited about that. But we really believe that it's also about brand, and it's also a place where people can learn about, how we feel about different components of our brand and why we're doing it. I mean, we launched Hint as a answer to really, giving up the diet sodas of the world, but there's a lot of other things that we believe in, and including, that plastic is actually one of the best materials that you can use, which is really counter to what a lot of, people talk about, but it's the most recyclable of all products, and it's glass is no longer recyclable, and these box containers, like you mentioned, are actually going into landfills flat, and they're not recyclable. So there's one place in the world that actually recycles those containers. And so anyway, there's a lot of knowledge that we have as a brand that we don't actually, go and talk about. But we thought in our store we can actually talk about it for those who really want to know more about those kind of things. And so anyway, I'm so curious because it sounds like you have a lot of knowledge about, the watch industry. I see this in, places like in Warby stores, for example. I mean, they talk about, that Luxottica brand and how they're not, that they're really not offering the best deals. There's not as much choice as you could actually have, and things like that. So have you thought about that as well?
Oh yeah, certainly. I think for us it's been kind of similarly to direct to consumer, wholesale, retail. Like what in what order, when's the right time. It's definitely coming up for us. It's just a matter of how we want to execute it. Like what's kind of the vision behind it. But also like what products do we have? I want to make sure that we have a large amount of kind of SKUs to offer to our customers. But we've been talking about it, and I think it's an important piece. Again, you have to be where your customers shop, and people still like an in-person experience, especially if it's brand owned, right? Like if you can tell your story and have this cool experience where versus just selling to a Starbucks or whoever, where it's not a bad place to be, but to have your own experience story to allow people to connect directly with the brand, I think really goes a long way. I think it's about how you execute it and just strategy around that, which it's not, again, like I come from the digital world, so it's all areas where I'm like, okay, I either have to learn it or I have to hire someone or, test or whatever it is. Like with everything, we kind of make sure that we're doing it right before, because I think that's how brands are built too. We come from, not that this is bad. There's a lot of brands that have been venture backed and kind of grow at this rapid pace, but for us who are completely bootstrapped, I just think that like the evolution of a brand takes time, and you learn things from kind of testing and failing. That's how I got to be an entrepreneur to begin with. So even with stores or new products or whatever, I kind of want to test and fail a little bit, because we're like some people who are, have large amounts of venture-backed kind of money will just jump right in and go as fast as possible because it's a race. Dollar Shave Club is racing, Harry's, and then all the other razor brands, right? So it's just grow, which again, I think depending on what industry you're in, you have to. I think for us, like our brand is strong enough. We've built a strong enough brand that we can not take our time, but just make sure that we do it right and not feel like we just need to like move because we have to do stores next or whatever. But it's definitely like, so for as an example, we'd probably do a pop-up first or have a location in Los Angeles just to test.
And just one.
And you guys are in San Fran too, right?
And that's the one. Yeah, that's the one that we end up doing. But I think that's really, really smart. I mean, I think to your point, people always say like, I've got to go out and raise money in order to do this, and they think that I'm being flip when I say why. Yeah. But I'm also like, if I'm a big believer that if you can't figure out how to actually make a business without going out and raising money, then it's probably not a business, right? Like most great entrepreneurs want to raise money, whether it's through Indiegogo or whether it's through, angels or whatever, in order to scale, right? But if you can't actually pull that back and build a business without that, and really quickly in your mind actually think about how can this business be a business without actually raising money, then it's probably not going to be a business. So I think that's like, and just to your point too, I mean, I remember 2008, 2009, which was some of the greatest points in our history and the last few years. I mean, we launched, we were a small brand. We were in some major retailers, and basically one retailer in particular came to us and said, so, the economy is in bad shape, and what we need to see happen is that we need to have you give us product and in all of our stores. And that way we'll be able to, sell your product, and we'll still be able to, do well, because we'll be, even if it's a slower economy, we'll still,
consignment, basically.
Well, not just consignment, but also they wanted the product for free. So they weren't going to so a major retailer. And so I said, so wait, I think I'm misunderstanding what you're saying. So you're not going to pay us for the product? And they said, that's right, but you're going to be able to be there, and you're going to be visible, and you have to view it as like marketing. And I was like, I just don't get it. And there were like 8 other brands that we knew that were going to do that deal. And we walked away and basically said, we'll grow slower, or we'll just close the whole company down in order to do it. But I mean, we're not going to lose money in a bad economy. I mean, that sounds really dumb. And then those other 8 brands went out of business. And like, we didn't go out of business. And then that large retailer called us and said, we really want you to be in our stores. And I said, oh, do you want me to give you twice as much product as like you asked last time? Like, I was laughing at the whole thing, because I thought, I don't really need them, but now they're willing to pay for the product. And because those other products went out of business. And so I think that if you have a business that you really believe doesn't need capital, but you are willing to go out and get the capital in order to actually, scale the business at some point, then I think it makes sense. But otherwise, I always say to people, and also like who you're actually taking money from. So, I mean, it's one thing if you're doing an Indiegogo like you did too, but I mean, the number of people who are making decisions because their investors are saying, well, you have to scale quicker because your competitor is like, they just got $50 million and they're going to go quick, and our investment's going to go away if you don't go just as fast. I mean, I've never had investors that are like doing that to us, who are basically like pushing on us to actually make decisions that we're not really that comfortable with. But I'm sure a million other companies that are doing that too. So I always say to people too, it's like, it's not just about the money, it's also about the partnership. And, can you actually go out and hang out with this person for a couple of hours and not feel like, strangling them by the end of it, or feeling like they're just yucky and dirty, and, like you've got to like those people that you're dealing with and partnered with, for sure.
Yeah, and these are examples of, so I don't come from that, background of raising capital or anything like that. So this was the time where I went to other founders and met with founders who have raised hundreds of millions of dollars, and same type of thing. Hey, can I buy you coffee? And I learned from them, and they've really helped me understand, get a holistic view, and just a view of an entrepreneur. Because it's easy, you talk to venture capitalists or you talk to, investors, and there's that view, which isn't a wrong view. It's just that view, and then you have the entrepreneur's view. And I think it's just good to like mix and match. And it's funny that it's been one instance where I've had, I wouldn't say radically different views, but just definitely different views of different ways to do things. And so I've kind of just formed my own opinion based off of it. Like there hasn't been one clear way to do it. I think it kind of goes investor to investor, and then also goes kind of business to business, depending on what you are. And, I think if you're an Uber, you go raise money and grow as fast as you can. If you're, but if you have a physical good like we do, you can raise money to get going, and I think it helps with inventory and to grow the business, but there's just certain areas where you have to be careful. Totally. So it's just stuff that I've learned, again, through kind of mentors that again, being in Los Angeles has been one. LA, San Francisco, and New York, I think, is
where it's all happening. Who is the entrepreneur that you look at as like the most inspiring?
Yeah, I mean, so we have one on our board, Jeff Kroll from Stance Socks. So he was I think he was like the chairman or something at Skull Candy before, and he had a tech startup before that he sold. So and he's a large angel investor. He hasn't invested in us, but just a really well connected guy. I think I also look for people who have a good work-life balance. Like I can't necessarily take advice from someone who is 100% work and like doesn't kind of neglects the rest of their life. So I just like finding people who I feel like have a good balance, because it's just, I feel like there's a certain sacrifice that you need to be willing to make, and seeing people who have that good balance, I just feel like, okay, that's something to kind of strive for. Like they figured it out to a degree. So outside of that, it's a good question. I don't know.
And how'd you meet him? Just reached out?
We got connected through kind of, and basically, connected, reached out, drove down to him, and it was funny because it was just like a casual conversation, and it turned into, which I've had with dozens of entrepreneurs, of just a one-time conversation or coffee, and this turned into, there was just like he's chemistry, good guy, and also like I think he's built an amazing brand, which I think in our space, a kind of physical kind of product or fashion, I think there's not as many that have done it like a Stance or a Movement. So outside of that, though, I don't know. I'm still, I think a lot of the other entrepreneurs I know, like, we're still in the thick of it. So it's not like, I think people are still growing. And
how big's your board?
It's just me, my co-founder, and
I was going to say, because you don't have investors, so you didn't have to put a big board together, but you really wanted to in order to learn. That's awesome.
Yeah, and him, it was more of just him helping with kind of larger. I mean, he's gone through a lot of what we've either planned to go through or have talked about. I mean, he has retail stores, and with Skull Candy, I mean, it's a more legacy brand that he's seen. Kind of old school, different strategies. So he's just, and also, I mean, he's done a ton of license agreements with Stance. They're the NBA, official NBA sock, official MLB sock. They've done stuff with Rihanna, Bing Sean, and just a handful of people. So definitely a good, I think from a brand and personal perspective, like inspiration for me and my co-founder.
That's awesome. So the name of the podcast is Unstoppable. So what makes you unstoppable?
What makes me unstoppable? Where did I hear this? It was something about how I think that when I think about like what I want to accomplish, it's like, which this might be a bad thing. I don't know. It might be like it might be a bad thing.
Nothing's bad.
It's this like, so I've just always had this. It's not the fear of failing for me. It's the fear of not. Like, I guess not trying. Like, I just want to. I know that I have to get, like, whether I fail, I'll start all over again. I have to get to what my goals that I've set for myself. So for me, it's just like that. I have that internal kind of spirit that it's again unstoppable, right? Like I think about it every day. I wake up and I think about the goals. I'm a big believer in law of attraction. So these are just things that I've been thinking about for years now. Before I started this business, like I've always had this goal of a life I wanted, and I'm not there yet, but it's just something that's been internal in me. And again, it's not the fear that like I'm going to try something and fail. I'm okay with that because I've failed a handful of times. It's just the fear of like not getting to that point makes me.
And you'll get there.
Yeah.
I know you're going to get there. I mean, you've got the vision, and you're definitely going to do it. Super, super awesome. So we ask a couple of questions too. So what's your favorite hint flavor?
What's my favorite hint flavor right now? This one right here.
The watermelon.
I've had this, and I think you guys have like a berry, like a cherry or something, or
we have a cherry. We have a blackberry. Yeah, those are.
I haven't had. You guys have sparkling ones too now, right?
Yeah.
I need to try that. I'm a big fan of sparkling water, but I love these. So
yeah, we also have a caffeinated. version of our product too, and we're coming out with the caffeinated sparkling version of the product, which is going to rock. So, but there's no sweeteners in any of our products. So
I live walking distance to a Whole Foods, so
yeah,
I definitely see you guys all the time.
yeah, very cool. And we're in Target. And we're huge in Target. So yeah, so we're getting more and more into lots of retailers, and actually we're on a bunch of campuses now. We're on actually your former UCSB's campus and ASU and lots of Auburn University. Where else did somebody just wrote to me the other day? Is it Northwestern? Yeah, so we're getting on more and more campuses because, you know, people are realizing that sugar is just, and all these sweetened drinks is not really what's going to help them, you know, not only stay healthy, but ultimately do what they want to do if they want to become entrepreneurs, or, you know, they've got to actually take care of themselves and to your point, like have some kind of balance in their life where they're, you know, doing something else that they like to do, whether it's running or soul cycling or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So
I love it.
What's your workout?
Right now I try and go to the gym 4 times a week. I'm in a bubble. My office, I could throw a rock out of my apartment and hit my office, and then the gym's just down the street. So I usually go and I'll lift weights for an hour, and then I'll run for 20 minutes or so.
Did you do that purposely to set up your business so that it's kind of...
No, not really. I mean, when I got my apartment, I lived in Venice, and then I moved to Playa Vista, and our office was in Culver City, so it was pretty close. And then we knew we needed to find a new place, and we were looking in various areas, and then it just so happened that literally this place across, like, it couldn't have been more coincidental that it was right across the street, and it was the best option that we found. So I don't know. It wasn't purposeful, but it happened.
So are you traveling a lot?
Somewhat, probably once a month.
Not bad.
Not bad. I try and stay in the office. I don't know. I'm going to have to travel more, but I'm not. Yeah, I like being in the office. I just keep a good sense. I sit out with everyone else. Like, I know what's going on. I have my office, but I only use it for phone calls and whatnot.
Yeah,
but
you're out in the open. My office is out in the open as well. Yeah, so sometimes it's a good thing. Sometimes it's like, maybe I should have it on.
I get distracted easily.
After that. Yeah, well, I was going to say, because I travel a lot, and I think that travel schedule really starts to sabotage my health regime, and you know, it just throws me off. But
that's actually another reason is, like, you come back from a flight, and I'm 10-15 minutes from LAX, so it's perfect. I can Uber, and it's not a big deal, but you just get exhausted. I mean, even flying San Francisco is actually the best place to fly. It's like a 45-minute. Yeah. But, you know, I've gone to Seattle to visit Amazon, and that's a couple hours. And, you know, anytime we have to go to New York, it's a big one. I've gone to Hong Kong and China a few times, which is the flights are never fun, but it's fun when you get there. So
just one last question. So an entrepreneur, like, what would you tell yourself as a budding entrepreneur that you wish someone would have told you ages ago?
Yeah, I think that, you know, I wish I would have consumed more podcasts, and for me, I actually like podcasts more than books. I feel like there are some great books out there, but it's hard for me to get through. I wish they just made books shorter. I wish there was just, like, all the good juicy stuff, and that was it. I listen to audiobooks too more than actually sit down and read. But
there's actually a podcast about that.
Is there?
Yeah.
I read a study on it. I think they said that listening is better than reading because you're using your eyes to, like, you know, read, and your mind to, like, process it versus just, like, listening. But anyways, so I think just listening to podcasts, like business related podcasts, you know,
and learn,
and just learning from
keep learning.
I've read a lot of, like, different forums and blogs. So for e-commerce, Shopify's blog is probably the best out there in my opinion. I think that whether it's just shadowing or interning, if you can, at other places, at like companies, I think taking, you know, again, founders, or it depends. If you want to start your business, I would say go take a founder out to lunch or you know, a drink or whatever, and just pick their brain as to what they did. I think finding people who have accomplished what you want to accomplish. I had a lot of successful people in my life that have been mentors to me, but it was when I wanted to make the jump into a specific industry, they didn't understand anything about it. And it was just hard because you get kind of contradicting advice from, other successful people about your business. And and I've just realized more and more as I've met a lot of successful people, that it's only people really specifically in my industry that really understand like certain things that I'm going about. So I don't know. I really think it's just getting out and networking, whether it's like a meetup or whatever. I mean, I used to do it way more and it proved to be worth every, ounce of my time. I think now I'm fortunate that I have people reaching out to me that I get to network with, or like we get people in the office. I spoke at HustleCon, which was like 2,500 people, and I just walked around. I said, as I was speaking, that I kind of answered this question. I said, if you see an entrepreneur or you have a chance, like, you have to go up and talk to them and, whatever. And I kind of shot myself in the foot, because right when I left and walked around, I had lost my voice by the end of it. But I loved it. I gave out my email, my number to a handful of people. I wanted to help any way I could, because there was a time where I didn't know. There wasn't a kind of an entrepreneur that I looked up to. There was the Mark Zuckerbergs, but they're just geniuses. And then you had Elon Musk. It just didn't connect with like what I wanted to do and what I thought my skill set was. A dropout in college as well with ADD. So these were things that I want to tell my story, and if I have a chance to talk to people, I really try to as much as possible. So
that's awesome. Well, great. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah,
it was super fun. You can check out the awesome products Jake is creating at movementwatches.com and keep up with this brand at Movement on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. That's @MVMT. Thanks all. I love giving away things that are dear to my heart, like Hint Water. So for the next 3 months, I'll be choosing 5 lucky listeners each episode to win a year's supply. To enter, all you have to do is go to karagoldin.com/iTunes and leave a review. That's it. And if I see you tweeting it out and tagging me at Kara Goldin, you will increase your chances of being picked. And as a special thank you to all of our Unstoppable subscribers, for a limited time only, you can enjoy a special hint offer at drinkhint.com/unstoppable. If you like what you heard, please help spread the word and leave us a review. You can also follow along with me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn at Kara Goldin. Do you have a question for me or want to nominate an innovator to spotlight? Please talk to me at Kara Goldin on Twitter. Thanks so much for listening. Until next time, be unstoppable.